Big Z Reviews. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, is the end of a trilogy of trilogies of one of my favorite series of movies. And I've also read a lot of the books and the comics and played most of the games. So, I love this series. And I kind of love this movie in spite of all the problems it has. Because it is a mess of a film.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing.
So I am about a week late to filming this review. That was partly because I wanted just to let the movie sit with me, and also partly because I didn't get around to filming with Christmas shenanigans. But the longer the movie sat with me, the more problems I had with it, I'd say. Because coming out of the theater, I did love it, and I still do kind of love a lot of moments of it. But just when you think about a lot of the choices it makes, it's definitely a messy film. And you kind of wish that they'd done something else because it could have been better. Even if they, I'm not going to, I might do spoilers at the end, but I'll keep it for free from there as much as I can. But, the choices that it makes, there are other ways you could have done it that would have worked better. But I think that it's funny. The Last Jedi, I loved it when I first saw it. The more I watched it, the more I had some problems with it. But I think after watching The Rise of Skywalker, it harmed how much I liked The Last Jedi. Because The Last Jedi didn't set anything up. You have to think, it's tough because, J.J. Abrams, I don't know. I think in The Last Jedi, all the stuff that he had set up, a lot of it, the Rian Johnson didn't really didn't care for. So he didn't really pursue some of the things that he had set up. And in this one, he's like, no, I want to go back to that. It's like in improv, the rule of improv is that you say yes and. So if someone comes in and changes the sketch you're doing, you would yes end their change. So keep it going and not grind it to a halt and try to bring it back to whatever you were doing. But I understand why he would do it. I think I've been thinking about this, and I really believe that if J.J. Abrams wanted to go the angle that this movie goes, he needed another movie to set it up. Because The Last Jedi did not set any of this up. And they could have. There's ways you could have easily set this up, but he didn't care about it. And it's tough because, there's three ways that he could have made this film. And he could have set things up. One would have been to just go with whatever The Last Jedi started and do something new with it. But the problem with that is, who would be the major villain? Because Adam Driver, he's pretty much guaranteed to have some sort of redemption arc, and so you can't really have him be the main villain. You have to have someone else. But would you introduce someone brand new, or would you introduce someone that came before? And I understand, but they could have done something else there, but he didn't want to do that. And the other option would have been the other option is what he could have done if he could have just pretty much gotten rid of everything that Rian Johnson did and created something new. And I think that's what he went for. But again, he didn't try to do anything new from it. He went back to, the original trilogy and try to bring things back from that. But the weird thing is, by doing that, you're kind of belittling some of the things that happen in the trilogy. and the way he did it, like, I mean, maybe you could have done something to set it up better, but with one movie, it's tough. But essentially, I mean, he's going back to the improv, the kind of comparison. If you had a 6-minute sketch, and someone comes in and spends the middle 2 minutes doing their own thing and changing what you originally done, then like it's like you go back and your last two, like 1 minute of your last two, you're having to go back to what you had instead of continuing something new. And I think this movie needed more time. Like, I mean, it needed to be longer, or needed like another movie in between. Like, they could have easily split this movie into two and expanded on stuff. And I don't think people would have minded. You didn't have to do a trilogy again. I mean, so many other series, when they did the last film, they would split it into two. And I think you easily could have done that. And I mean, you could have had them, searching for some dark message coming on. They don't say who it is exactly, and that you give more time for that weird bond to build with Rey and Kylo Ren, and you have more time for the other main characters to actually bond. Because it's funny, at one point, Daisy Ridley is showing out with Oscar Isaac, and they're like, "Hi, nice to meet you," or something like that. I'm like, "Oh wait, yeah, they've not really even met in any of the movies, and they're two main characters." That's weird, because I mean especially there's like stuff at the end where they like when they don't seem like they should have bonded that much, and like it's weird because I mean, rewatching the original trilogy, there's even from the first film you can see they have such a bond, and you can feel that the emotion between. I mean, part of that's probably your own emotions implanted on it, but you've watched it so many times. But they feel like they're friends. They feel like they're team, and you never felt that way about any of these people really. Any of the new characters, you never really felt like they were a team and they were fighting for the galaxy, to save the galaxy. Like, I never really got that, and it's a shame. However, the movie is filmed beautifully. Although he went back to using a lot of lens flare, and I don't mind it. But I mean, it's filmed really well. The action has a lot of great action, and the stuff at the climax. Again, it's a little. If you stop to think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Like, but that's like, I wish he had. Like, it's almost like with the prequel with George Lucas, where he had like unfettered direction and what he wanted to do. And J.J. Abrams had it in this movie, and he shouldn't have. They needed someone to rein him in or do something else. Because, like, I mean, there are bits of it I really liked. And as a whole, I liked it as they completing the saga, but it didn't really work. I don't think it's a spoiler to talk about Naomi Ackie. Like, I think she's in the trailers, riding the horses. And a little bit felt odd, like okay, we need to set up a more in kind, a more similar potential relationship for John Boyega. So let's bring in another black stormtrooper, this time a female. Oh. And that's fine, but they don't even really pursue that angle. Like, there's stuff at the end that we were like, that's odd. But the way she, like, her character is, it doesn't really matter. That it's just I was like, oh, so all of these stormtroopers they're killing are just people that have been they're brainwashed as kids, and if you give them a chance, they could turn on their masters and become good people. So now they're just murdering all these faceless, potentially good people. But I think it would have made sense that like everything they did in the previous films doesn't matter. Like, the whole idea of The Last Jedi, a lot of it was that they were going to be a bright light for the galaxy to a new hope. That you can defeat this new order. And then they don't do anything with that. Like, what if she was inspired by the story of John Boyega as Finn, as him, disobeying his orders and getting rid of the stormtrooper suit and joining the resistance. What if he inspired other stormtroopers to rebel? Like it'd be so easy to move that into conversation. Why wouldn't you do that? And with Oscar Isaac, they also had to pair him up with a new person. But I mean, she was really cool. Carrie Russell as Zori Bliss, like it was a cool character, and I liked the interplay with him. Oscar Isaac was one of the high notes of this film, but at the same time, you're setting up all these new characters, and you're like, the movie, you really need to get going. You don't have that much runtime. You need to stop worrying about introducing new characters in the last film of a trilogy and actually have them doing shit. Like, if you think about the original trilogy and even the prequel trilogy, no characters were introduced in the third film. You had your cast from the previous ones, and then now you have to let them do their thing. In this one, they're still trying to introduce characters, and it's like, oh no, you gotta get going. You gotta and I don't know, but that it's fun. But I like the characters. I just think that if you're gonna do that, you needed another film, or you needed like a 3.5 hour epic, instead of like 220 or whatever it was. And for Daisy Ridley, I think she did fine. I still think that I don't agree that she's a Mary Sue. But I think that they don't challenge her enough. They don't show her suffering. They don't show her being beat. Even from the very beginning, you never see a moment of losing. All the main characters in other films, they lose limbs or they're hurt. They're beat up and they have to strive to overcome. And I feel like she never had a chance to overcome anything. Like she was always just so the beast, the best around, that she didn't have to. And I think that if you're gonna do that, they had that. I guess again, not really a spoiler, but you have that one little clip of her as a Sith, and that if they were gonna do that angle instead of just so they can have a toy of it, you could do that angle, especially with things that are revealed. And I think they should have maybe done more with that maybe she's being tempted by the dark side, but they didn't. So it's just that, so there's no point in her being so perfect. I wanted her more character growth for her, and she never really had any character. I don't really know that much about her, about who she is. It's just, it sucks that these characters you got to spend 3 movies with, and I don't really know who they are that much. I think the person that had the most character growth was, Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. And this movie continues that growth, and you see him, he is probably the most, original character in the film, in the new characters. And also the one that grows the most and changes, and you understand who he is and maybe why he does what he does. And... But I really like a lot what Adam Driver does. It's just that some of the stuff toward the end is a little goofy, but it's great. And I think the previous cast, with Carrie Fisher as Leia, they had a really tough thing to do. I don't know, I can't really say if they were what they did was right or what they did was wrong, because they took other footage and they put it in with other stuff, and I don't maybe be digital clothes, or they change the clothes that she was wearing. And some of the stuff works, some of the stuff is a little odd, but I still think the way they decided to use her needed more clarity, because the way I saw it, I liked, but they could have done something slightly different with it. But it's just this whole movie is kind of like that. You can kind of go through it and think, I wish they would have done this, I wish they would have done that. And yeah, they made a lot of odd choices, and it suffers from that. But it's still if I know it's kind of stupid to say turn off your brain, but in the moment I still really loved it and enjoyed it. It had a lot of action, had a lot of fun, and as that I really loved it. But it's just, when you stop to think about it, there is a lot of stuff that would annoy you and might bring you out of the enjoyment of the film, and that's too bad. So as for how I would rate this film, I think I'd probably give it like an 8.75 out of 10. Or maybe like an 8.5 out of 10. Or maybe even like lower. Like I have to see, it might change as I watch it like multiple times. Maybe The Last Jedi has kind of changed how I felt about it when I watched it multiple times, and so we will have to see. But as for spoilers, there are a couple things that I want to talk about because so it is full spoilers from now on out, because I really think that if they wanted to go the way they did, there was a way they could have done it. And of course, the big thing is, Palpatine is back, and he is Daisy Ridley's grandfather. And I don't mind that, but there's so many better ways he could have done it. I think it would have worked at the end of The Last Jedi if he said, even if with Snoke, again, that one thing I like, that with, because he killed off Snoke, and who knows what J.J. Abrams was going to do with Snoke. He may have been the main big villain, but when you kill him off in the second movie, what do you do? Well, in the third movie, you show a quick glimpse of a bucket full of Snoke body parts, and you're like, well, what? But I understand that you want to. So what do? Do you have Adam Driver be the main villain and turn full evil and have to fight Rey? Do you have Rey turn evil? Do you have some brand new villain you bring in? Or do you go back to the guy that's been a part of, the each trilogy? And it's almost like and I kind of like that, but you had to set it up. I can't believe that they didn't have someone making the continuity between these movies, some sort of story they had planned from the beginning. I can't imagine they didn't do this. I mean, trilogies are one of my favorite forms of storytelling. I think the two authors that have the best trilogies in the business are Mark Lawrence and Robin Hobb, and their trilogies are so perfect, and the trilogy really works well. But you can't have a third movie of a trilogy that has to set everything up. But for the argument, say that this is a trilogy, you couldn't do any more movies, and you couldn't have a really long movie. How do you set up the Emperor like that? You can't do it in the crawl with how they did it. That is just it's like the dead speak, and And I think that the way they did him, if you watch the original trilogy, he freaking blows up. He is thrown into this pit, and then the pit explodes, and then the Star Destroyer, and then the new base explodes, and then you say some of it must crash land on the planet. How would he survive by that? And the physical body would not survive. So is he a clone? But if he is a clone, he wouldn't look so as bad. The way they designed his body is obvious he's been racked by time and injury, and so assume that that's the same body he had for the other movies. So how would his body have survived? Honestly, I think that if he wanted to do it, I think when I saw him, I think, oh, I bet there's going to be an evil Force ghost. And I think that you could have done an evil Force ghost. And if you're doing an evil Force ghost, guess what you could do? You could have Mark Hamill, as Luke Skywalker, come back and fight the Emperor as a ghost. As two Force ghosts fighting each other. And I think that would have been awesome. And you could have done, instead of, for Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley, maybe he's still trying to affect them. Maybe he's even trying to infect them, and that he wants to possess one of them. And the Force dyad thing is kind of goofy, but I think that it's more what if the Emperor is essentially he's training his new body to take over and try to possess, but he can't decide between the two, and then maybe you could do something when right at the beginning you could say they're when they're fighting on on the, in the ocean or whatever. Amazing, beautiful scene. I love the fight between them. But like if that's where the ghost was, if that's where they first saw the ghost and is talking to him and influencing them, and they started fighting, and he goes, "Good, good, let the hate run through you. You are my granddaughter, Rey. You are a Palpatine. Now kill Kylo Ren and take his place." And you can fight. You can even have them, fighting each other. And he said, "I don't believe it." And then she kills Kylo Ren. And then I think that if you're gonna have the Force be magic and have it be whatever you want it to be, and now it's like life force and you can heal people, I think that I don't know if, like, maybe you have some exposition in the beginning. Say one of those books that she got, and one of the books that describes an ancient way of using the Force to heal. Bam! That was a problem solved. And that maybe, like, you could do even something like maybe the Force is different now because so many Force users died. Like the now is stronger in these ones that are left, and that maybe you can even do more. Like I always thought that in the original trilogy, when Padme dies randomly, like she died of sadness. Oh wow! Like even though it doesn't work with what the trilogy says, because Leia says that she remembers her mother, her real mother, and that she was sad, before and. So it doesn't really work for that, but, whatever, that's old Lucas shenanigans. But, if you're gonna do that, I always thought that, the Emperor was, like, transferring the life energy from Padme into Darth Vader to create him. And you could have played with that. You could have commented about that, and I just think that if you're going to do the Emperor, you have to set him up more. You have to, like, and I think that if it's more of like a power, an evil energy, instead of just some weird guy on like on the crane that's moved around in this giant stadium. It's just kind of odd. If Daisy Ridley as Rey, if she was almost like becoming evil, and like she was angry at Kylo Ren, like said, "I don't believe it, you're lying," or both of you, "I'm not Palpatine." But then she kills him. She kills, Kylo Ren. And then that's when Leia, like, she can feel it. And she puts all of her life energy into Adam Driver to, bring him back to life. And that's how she dies. And make it clear that's what's happening. And, maybe that, and then they really, like, runs away. And then, then Adam Driver can have his scene with Han and all that stuff, and that's great. But I think and they play it more with Daisy Ridley, like where she's thinking that, am I evil? They do more like, and they do more with stuff like when all the different fake outs are so goofy. But you have a setup where you think she may kill Chewbacca. But I think that if you do more with that, like, instead of having it being a different transport, have that be the transport, but maybe have, like, when essentially, thinks she, lets use the ship. Maybe the ship's crashing, and Kylo Ren is able to stop it from crashing fully, and Chewbacca gets out, and he survives, but now he has a scar or something, like he's damaged. Hell, you get another toy from it then. But that is something that Daisy Ridley is more because it's more impactful. That except for a moment where she thinks she may have killed Chewbacca, there's nothing comes from it. But saying that, like, she looks at Chewbacca's face and sees the scar and knows that that's my fault. I lost control and force electrocuted this freaking ship. I think that there's so many other things they could have done with that potentially dark array. And I mean, like they say, I think that in the end, if you want to do this whole exegol planet, the whole idea of it is a little bit of a stretch. But I mean, you can't have so many ships. I know he wanted to create something that looked cool, but it wouldn't make sense, especially for all these ships. Like they set up in a recent film that you need all these crystals to make that first planet killer. But now you have like hundreds of ships with each one with a planet killer. Like, it just doesn't really work. It's just kind of goofy. I mean, it looks cool, but it doesn't really work. And you have this, a whole setup and everything. It's just kind of goofy. But I think that if you maybe had like Daisy and Adam Driver going against the Knights of Ren, if maybe the Knights of Ren were more set up, and maybe going against whatever weird Sith thing they have there, and then while Luke fights the Emperor as a ghost, for the Force ghost, would have been awesome. And it would have been fan servicey, but cool, good fan servicey. The other biggest problem with the film, though, is that knife, that Sith knife. When you think about it, none of it makes sense. Like, that's what I think that if instead it was like, it seems like she can sense the evil of it. So maybe like she can like go into that knife and try to find where it came from and like where the planet was. And that was the MacGuffin. And that was, instead of just having it be like, oh, the hilt of this knife stretches out, and now I replace it to a crashed ship. So he would have had to make this knife after the ship crashed, and exactly where inside the ship is this thing. It's so stupid. And it's then the point is like, oh, of course, the Sith thing would be in the Emperor's old boudoir. So it makes sense. Like, you don't need that knife. But I think if you use that knife instead, that she tries to get into it and unlock its secrets using the Force, and that it might taint her, it might taint Rey a little by diving into all the dark energies in it, and that's maybe a gateway to start to let the Emperor into her. Like, there's so much you could have done with that. It's so frustrating that they didn't do anything, and what they did with it is just so goofy. But what are you gonna do? And I think finally the biggest spoiler thing that is so it is cringeworthy is when Chewbacca gets the medal at the end from Lupita Nyong'o's Maz Kanata. And it's like, oh, you got your medal finally. That was a joke. That was a joke. And now it's like the climax of the film, like the big thing you're supposed to go, he got his medal. And it's like, that was probably the worst part of the film. But, whatever. I still really enjoyed it. I still had a good time, and I still look forward to seeing it multiple times. I'll have to see how my opinion changes on it over time. But it's a shame that they couldn't have taken more time or done something more with it and created a better film. But what are you going to do? Thanks for watching. You can share the replace from my head and subscribe to me at Z over there. Thanks. This has been a Big Z movie review. Thanks for watching.